Bruchim Abayim, welcome everyone. We're continuing Ashur Charuch or Achaim Hilchot Shabbat in Siman Resh Samech Aleph, Seif Bet, and this is one of those Seifim with complex, many moving parts of the background Sugya Ben Hashmashot, the larger than life Machloket of Rabbeinu Tam, what's known as Rabbeinu Tam and Geonim, which is really majority of the Rishonim versus the Geonim and the Gra on the other side, and so on. So we briefly spoke about it. I want to just read some parts of this. So we explained the background of Sugya according to Rabbeinu Tam, that you have a stira, an apparent contradiction between the Sugya in Masechet Pesachim, Daf Sadi Dalet, and the Sugya in Masechet Shabbat, Daf Lamed Dalet and Lamed Hey. On one hand, the Gemara in Pesachim says between Shkia and Seta Kochavim is 4 meal, which is the amount of 72 minutes. On the other hand, the Sugya in Masechet Shabbat says between Shkia and Seta Kochavim, the amount of Ben Hashmashot is 3/4 of a meal, which is 3/4 of 18 minutes, which is 13.5 minutes. So which is it? Is it 72 minutes? Is it 13.5 minutes? So Rabbeinu Tam says, well, they're both incongruent together. These two actually are two separate parts of the same reality. You have two shkiyas. You have shkiya rishona, which is when we see the sun sink below the horizon, and that is not night. That's not ben hashmashot. That's nothing. That's day. Full day. You can start shish kebabing on Friday afternoon, no problem. For another 58.5 minutes is vadayom. 58.5 minutes later starts the period of ben hashmashot for the next 13.5 minutes. 58.5 plus 13.5. Last time I did this, it ended up being 72. It's still probably the same number, right? So that's the 72 minutes. That's how Rabbeinu Tam understands this, right? Now the Biur Halacha explains this in Dibura Matchil Mitchilat HaShkiya. If you take a look at that, he explains the Shita of the Stira in the Gemara, the Shita of the Rabbeinu Tam, and then the Shita of the Gra, which is claimed to be Shita of the Geonim as well, in the middle of this discussion. So when we have the Shita of Rabbeinu Tam presented in the Biur Halacha over here, right? The way we said it, the way we understood it, Chelek ben Shkiat HaChama, the Pesachim, the Shkiat HaChama, the Shabbat. That's the language of Biur Halacha. Maran Chida Alav Shalom in Birkei Yosef, in our Siman over here in Sif Katan Aleph, and also in Kuntres Acharon that he has in Birkei Yosef, he says that minhag is very important, because this, how do you deal with this? So says Maran Chida, minhag in Erev Shabbat is Kisvarat HaGeonim. We follow the Geonim in Erev Shabbat, right? That Shkiat HaChama is when the sun goes down. That's already the beginning of Shabbat. Not like Rabbeinu Tam. And he brings, in the name of the Rabbanei Mitzrayim, the Poskim in Mitzrayim, the Ginat Veradim, Ramolko, he was the Av Bedin of Mitzrayim. In Ginat Veradim, he writes that in all of Glulot Israel, all of the communities in Klal Israel, the minhag is like the Geonim. That's a very strong comment to make. And he actually, Ginat Veradim was a very popular posek. The Sefer Ginat Veradim, those who have it, you could look it up. Half of it is the tshuvot he prints of people from all over the place that wrote him questions. He was a very well-rounded, well-liked, and well-connected individual. So he says that's the minhag. But writes Maran Chida Motzei Shabbat, but the end of Shabbat, it will be different. Keshiur shenayim shlosha milin madlikin. That will be a longer shiur afterwards, It doesn't say fully like the Rabbeinu Tam, which would be more than shlosha meal, but it says almost like shlosha meal. So basically comes out, without getting into too much nitty-gritties, by Erev Shabbat they're machmir like the Geonim, by Motzei Shabbat they were machmir almost like the Rabbeinu Tam, right? And that's what the Kaf HaChaim writes in Kaf HaChaim Sofer. Chaim Sofer, he writes also in the very beginning of this Siman Resh Samech Aleph, over here, writes the same thing, and he writes that the minhag nowadays, now you have to understand the history of Kaf HaChaim was that he was a student of the Ben Ish Chai in Baghdad. He was born and raised in Baghdad, in Iraq, and then he made Aliyah. It was a whole question really. He left his wife and his children, his asses and his Sfarim and all that in pursuit of Eretz Yisrael. He felt it was a mitzvah to live there and so on for him. And his wife asked the question actually from the Ben Ish Chai, how to deal with this, how to follow him, not to follow him, to go, to not go, how to the expenditure of the travel and the move and so on, selling his Sfarim perhaps. A very, very interesting part of the biography of the Kaf HaChaim. But he lived half of his life basically here, half of his life is there. So when he talks about minhagim, it's very much binding of what he witnessed, not just in Minhag Yerushalayim and Minhag Bet Eli, joined the Yeshivat Bet Eli, Yeshivat Mikubalim, but also what he saw in his youth growing up in Ir Va'em Israel, in city of Baghdad in Iraq. So says the Kaf HaChaim, the minhag nowadays is Kisfarat Geonim Davka. This is why we follow the Geonim through and through for Chumras. Every Chumrah of Geonim we keep, but not for Kula. So that means Motzei Shabbat you can say, we hold like Geonim, right? 13 and a half minutes after Shkia, I could do Havdalah. Chas v'shalom. Says the Kaf HaChaim, only the Chumrah we follow the Shita of the Geonim when Shabbat comes in, when Yom Kippurim comes in, and all that. That after Shkiat HaChamam, it's already considered night and it's Shabbat. But for Motzei Shabbat and eating matzah and Leil Pesach, right? Because it has to be Leil Pesach or Leil Sukkot, upcoming, right? We learn, the Gemara learns it, Tetvav from Gezerah Shavah, that you hayav de oraita to eat kazait or kabetzav bread in sukkah, in your sukkah, in the first night of Sukkot. It's a mitzvah de oraita. No jokes, right? So when do you say, Geonim is Shkia, 13 and a half minutes past, I could no. So mitzvah de oraita for eating matzah and Pesach, for eating bread on the first night of Sukkot, for Yom Kippur, for all those, we follow the Shita of Rabbeinu Tam. You're mahmir under all those, right? So says the Kaf HaChaim, then we wait until at least 3 mid-sized stars are out. Now, he also is very carefully staying away from saying we hold like Rabbeinu Tam, because the minhag was not like Rabbeinu Tam, 72 flat minutes or halachic minutes, but they would actually wait to see 3 Kochavim Benonim. That means not very bright stars, but also not tiny stars, not very faded stars, far stars. It's, the mid-size stars. And it says every place is based on what it is, which is very important piece of Kaf HaChaim, because this is recognizing the degrees, right? Now, if I may take just a moment to explain this degree business. All the times that I mentioned that sugya in Masechet Pesachim Daf Samech Sadi Dalit are the Rishonim write that these are based on the times of Eretz Yisrael. We're talking about the latitude of Eretz Yisrael, longitude of Eretz Yisrael, and only in equinoxes, right? Equinoxes are the 2 times of the year that the day and the night are exactly equal. That's when these times are mentioned. So therefore, the poskim write that night and day depend on level of light in the sky. That's what determines light the night and day. So it depends where you are, because if you know a little bit about this chokhmah of this science, you know that depending on where you find yourself on Earth, 13 and a half minutes after Shkia could be actually dark and you could be able to see stars, right? When I was in Ir Habira in Tehran, I actually measured it. I measured 13 and a half minutes in equinoxes after sunset, and you could see stars. Now try that when I was in Northern Europe, lived there for a bunch of months. 35, 40 minutes after Shkia, nothing, no stars, no way, right? Why is that so? Because it depends on where on Earth you are, and but if you go to Eretz Yisrael in equinoxes, and 13 and a half minutes after Shkia, measure what the degree of the sun is below the horizon, that level always in any place on Earth will give you the same exact level of darkness in the sky. So if you tell me that if I go to Eretz Yisrael in equinoxes and I measure Alot HaShachar, and Alot HaShachar would end up being 16.1 degrees below the horizon, that's what that degree thing comes from. It's the level of sun being below the horizon. So if 16.1 degrees below the horizon is the level of Alot HaShachar in equinoxes in Eretz Yisrael, now I could go to Yehopetzville and measure how many minutes is it going to be before sunrise when the sun is 16.1 degrees below the horizon in that place. And it could be 90 minutes, it could be 70 minutes, it could be 60 minutes, it could be 80 minutes. And that would be the amount that I would need, technically speaking. Again, I'm overly simplifying a very, very complex and multi-layered sugya, but that's what the Kaf HaChaim in his Lashono HaZahav, in his amazing language, methodically thought through words, he is referring to that every place, depending on where it is, it will differ, the amount of these minutes. And Maran Chacham Obadia Alav HaShalom, in many places, he writes that a person should be very careful. Ben Torah, certainly, in the first place, he writes this in a serious way. It's in Yabi Omer, Chelek Bet, in Siman Chaf Aleph. He says, Bnei Torah should be Mahmir, that for Shabbat, you should be, Set HaKochavim of Rabbeinu Tam should be what you keep on Motzai Shabbat. So we hold like the Geonim when it comes to Erev Shabbat. But on Motzai Shabbat, at least he writes for the Deoraitas, at least for things that are Melacha, you should do it until Dalet Milin, which is the Shiur of Rabbeinu Tam. His son, Rabbi Yaakov Alav HaShalom, in one of his shiurim that he gave right before Shabbat Shuvah, a number of years ago, my Chavruta in Eretz Yisrael attended the shiur, so he was telling me after the shiur what he said. He had said that in Shabbat Shuvah we are machmir on all kinds of different chumrot that we are normally not machmir. So many people who are, not careful in carrying in Eruv, they are careful not to carry even in Eruv on Shabbat Shuvah and so on and so forth. So one of the things he mentioned was also this, that Seta Shabbat, you want to be mahmir like the Rabbeinu Tam. Fine. So that's would be Shaot Zmaniyot. It's 72 minutes, halachic minutes, which again, deep in the winter could be 60 minutes. Deep in the summer could be 90 minutes almost, 85 minutes, whatever it is. So something to again get educated and speak to your morah about how to go about this. But says the Biur Halacha, one more piece over here, one more piece in the middle when he starts discussing the Shita of the Vilna Gaon. אבל הגר"א ז"ל חולק על שיטה זו, he disagrees with this. והעריך בכמה ראיות, he has many very strong, solid ראיות against the שיטה of רבנו תם, Umiyat, and he holds miyat achar shkiat guf hashemesh matchil ben hashmashot. That as soon as you see the sun sink below the horizon, that's when ben hashmashot starts. And of course, you have got 13 and a half minutes shaot zmaniot after that, right? So Chacham Ovadia writes in Chelek Zayin of Rabbi Omer, when he discusses this at length in Siman Mem Aleph over there, that's the Ikar al-Halacha. We paskin, even though the Maran over here paskins like Rabbeinu Tam, even though that many Rishonim support the Shita of Rabbeinu Tam, the Ikar al-Halacha, says Chacham Ovadia, is like the Vilna Gaon that, and the Gaonim, that the Pirush of Shkia is, Shkiat HaChama means when the sun sinks below the horizon. That's what it means. And then this period of Ben Hashmashot continues for the next 13 and a half minutes after that. Now again, this is something that Chacham Ovadia discusses in many places, and later Chalakim of Rabbi Omer as well, in Chelek Yud. He has another very large piece in this, but that is beyond the scope of this talk right now. So we will leave that as something for later discussion. I will just end with one last piece over here. If you take a look towards the end of this very long and beautiful and complex Biur Halacha, it says, this is about 5 lines up from the bottom of the page. He says, Veda, and you should know, the Besefer Yereim, in Yereim, of one of the Gdolei Arishonim, Rabbi Eliezer Mimitz, he writes, Echmir od yoter le'inyan hatchalat ben hashmashot. He is more mahmir, that ben hashmashot starts even before. Usevir aleh, he holds, the ben hashmashot matchil 3 mil kodem hatchalat shkia. The ben hashmashot starts 3 mil before our shkia. Right? That's when Ben Hashmashot starts. Ve'huvu udvarav be'agudah, that means 13 and a half minutes before Shkia. In Agudah and Mordechai, many other Rishonim bring this, right? This Shita. And the Bach discusses this at length, and Bach, in that massive piece, he writes that the Chatchila should be noheg like the Shita of the Yereim, right? And he says that that's the minhag of the Keilot in his time as well. Now, the Magen Avraham also brings the Shita of the Yereim, and he seems to actually, even though the Magen Avraham is a very even kill, straight shooter, he's machmir. It seems like the Chumra is choshesh for this Bach, even though the Mikar Adin does not agree with it. And therefore, this creates a shita that you have to be even more machmir. If you want to do 18 minutes before that time for Hadlakat Nerod, you end up, and Biur Halacha says it, you should do that. You'll end up with 30 minutes before Shkia instead of 18 minutes before Shkia, right? A little bit over 30 minutes. So that's the source that you see that many people were mahmir to light the Nerot 30 minutes before. That is the source for it. Again, a very important yidiyah. It was kedai to mention this. They should know that Sefer Menuchat Ahava from Rav Moshe Levi alav hashalom, of the more recent poskim of our generation in Chelek Bet, Siman Vav, he actually is machmir like this shita of the Yereim, and he writes that many people are noheg to light at least, to light 10 minutes before the shkia, and they won't do further than that, right? I mean, you don't have this 18 minutes lechatchila, but then you do it 2 minutes before shkia also if you're running late. No, they will do minimum of that. Because of the Yereim, and again, he says, Tabala Beracha, at the very least, you will be blessed if you do it. The Rabbi Omer brings the Yereim. He says, our minhag is not to be choshesh for the Yereim, but nevertheless, again, it's one of those things that you want to be shomer Shabbat k'ilchata. You want to be careful in the details. Bekala, k'bachamura is one of those things that's kedai to keep in mind as well. We'll Bezat Hashem continue the next Seif in the days to come. Hazaku Baruch.